Greetings and salutations. Today I'd like to talk about Blackish Season 6, Episode 3, which focuses on feminism. So, Bo has been feeling extra feminist lately. She's been going to a lot of rallies and really been trying to inspire change within her community recently. She's really proud of it. It's really inspiring. She tells her family about it. And, as she's expressing all these accomplishments of feminist progression to her family, Diane's like, yeah, that's cool and all, Rainbow, but I'm not a feminist. Which just leaves Rainbow in shock. They don't really get into the nitty gritty of, first wave feminism, second wave feminism, and all that kind of stuff. And I don't really expect Diane to know all the nuances and details and history of that because, well, she's like 13, so she just kind of said she doesn't like it because she doesn't like the sound of it or whatever, and just like she's always felt superior to boys and doesn't need a title next to her name to confirm it. But Bo pretty much kind of puts her foot down and forces her to go to this woman gathering despite Diane being reluctant. And I love this scene that sets up that scenario.
Diane, you're coming with me.
You can't tell me what to do.
I am going to tell you what I have been telling you since you were 2 years old. Yes, I can. And they're going to have donuts.
Fine, I'll go.
During the family conversation about feminism, Dre gets called out by his family and gets exposed for not really being a true feminist, which isn't that surprising considering his mom and dad are raised with kind of older values, and his dad was very, misogynistic in his time, and his mom kind of enabled him and enabled that behavior. So Dre just kind of grew up in a very, and parents essentially basically always adhered to gender norms, which were fairly rigid during their time. So Dre is basically just a product of the people that raised him, and he has some work to do. And the Johnson men are ready to help Dre as well as Grandpa a little bit change their ways. So that's plot B. The Dre Johnson men trying to be, cured of their misogynistic views. But Dre is like seriously really bent out of shape about this whole situation. So much so he takes it to the workplace and does his favorite thing and vents with his coworkers. And while he's venting with his coworkers, he finds himself agreeing with pretty much everything they're saying. And, whenever that happens, it's a red flag. And this is something that Dre is starting to notice faster and faster because as soon as it happens, he's like, yeah, there's there's a problem. So I really love that, and it's always so hilarious. The self-awareness is great.
Would you ever go see a movie with a female James Bond?
Hell no!
Hell no.
Oh, God, I may have a problem.
Next thing we know it, we are at the feminist function, and Bo's trying to show Diane all the greatness of what the women are doing. And one of the women at the function say, "This is the worst time for women."
Whoa, whoa. I mean, these are really bad times for women, but it's not the worst thing to ever happen in our history.
What is she talking about? I'm confused. I don't know.
Slavery, because black women were slaves.
Oh, right.
Neglecting all the other times throughout American history where women didn't necessarily have equal rights to men. They don't necessarily get paid the same or didn't get the same job opportunities in the past. They didn't even get the right to vote until not too there's a lot of times that have been worse for women in the history of America. But despite all of that, the worst time was absolutely slavery. And since the entire women's group is comprised of white women, like Ruby warned a little bit earlier in the episode.
Rainbow, you need to tell these children the truth. Feminism is for white women, like your friend who don't want to wear a bra.
And that comment just really made Bo reconsider her relationship with this group. And I really love this scene because it points out one of the biggest issues with feminist groups, and it's that they don't always take into considerations people in living in intersectionality and what they have to go through. If you don't know what that word is, Google it. But it's basically the fact that women's groups only see things from a white straight woman's perspective. For plot B, we go with the Johnson men to a restaurant, and Jack and Junior are trying to observe Dre and Grandpa in their natural habitats and just try to give them the nudge or in the right direction when they start kind of acting up. And while they're observing Dre and Grandpa in the restaurant, they both make some. Dre and Grandpa both make an error in regards to women, but it's in different forms. Dre is a little bit more subtle, Grandpa is a little bit more direct. Dre tells his waitress, to smile more, which is somewhat of a weird comment to tell really anybody, but when it's directed towards women, it's like, hey, I'm trying to tell you how to feel. A woman should be happy to be serving. And so there's a lot of different reasons why it's just kind of weird to tell somebody how to feel. So, and Dre just kind of really didn't get that. And Grandpa was just like, "Oh man, you so fine." Da, 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 da. But it's kind of just like they don't really care about Grandpa because he's like old or whatever. He's about to die soon, and it's for the jokes. But Dre is the real problem because he thinks he's a feminist and he's really not. And Grandpa's not fronting like he is. But Dre asks the waitress. She confirms that it makes her feel uncomfortable, and Dre has now realized that he is the problem. After Bo's realization that her women's group is severely lacking representation, she goes out of her way to recruit some girlfriends. And we get the momentous reunion of the girlfriends. Now, as we move into the climax of the episode, we return to Bo and her girlfriends. And the climax begins mainly at the women's meeting. And they're all talking about how they're going to start moving forward and how they're going to be more inclusive and try to add more, you know, try to voice problems that include all groups. So instead of talking about the pay disparity that only affects women of the white race, they talk about Latinx women pay and black women pay and how they want to add all those numbers into the mix. And I think they're trying to get a white police officer appointed to some kind of position, but one of the girlfriends object because the police officer they're trying to get on the position had some violent tendencies apparently that needed to be further investigated. And they're just clashing. They're just clashing a lot more, and Bo wasn't just to a point where Bo and her white friend Abby just get into a very big disagreement about how Bo is trying to take over the women's movement, and it's just like it's not really about taking it over. It's more about having equal representation, and everything with that just kind of collapses. Bo leaves, takes her friends with her, and forms her own women's movement for women of color. But the falling out between Abby and Bo was really sad to see because they seemed like really, really tight earlier on in the episode, you know? And they really did have common interests. And sometimes there is a form of validity of trying to solve the issues of like the white women and then going down and helping the issues of everybody else, because if they're able to help the majority group, the benefits sometimes trickle down to everyone else. And I could see that, but I guess maybe that's like an older kind of thinking, and Bo's trying to be very modern and current, and just the best way to do it is to get everyone included and this and that. But I mean, I don't know. I'm not quite sure what the right answer is or how to approach it. But I will say that I didn't really like that one of the girlfriends like tried to force it to be like a black woman, at least like one of them. I mean, they could have found anyone with really good credentials to fit that position. You know, it could have been a black woman, a white woman, Indian, Latin, Native American. I mean, but she was like, let's find a black woman to fit that position instead of that police officer. And it's like when you say stuff like that, you kind of make other, non-black people a little bit uncomfortable. So it's like some of the girlfriends were almost kind of turning it into a racial thing. But at the same time, it's like Abby wasn't trying to include any of that at all. It's just they couldn't really find the right mix. But I really loved it, that nuance. There's no real right answer, there's no real wrong answer, and it's just like why I love this show. And I really love the self awareness of this show, because at the end we get a nice little scene about Dre just kind of like dashing in to grab some food while they're cutting up some cake or something like that. And then one of the women's are like, "Hey, ladies first," or something like that. And then it's just like, oh, so we're being selective at what part of the patriarchy we want to accept. So you want to get things first, but you don't want to. So I liked how they kind of poked fun of that, and it was really like smart and funny, and just take everything with a grain of salt.
Thank you.
All right.
My man.
Bo, what is wrong with this man?
Just snatching it out of her hand
I
like
just-
that.
I
Doesn't
took
your
it-
husband know how to be a gentleman? I'll tell you.
Well, the gentleman made the sandwiches.
Sweetheart. Ladies first.
But it's 2019, babe. What about the patriarchy? What am I doing wrong?
I've been asking that question for the past 20 years.
Thank you for watching my review this week, and join me next week to discuss the next episode of Blackish. Join me in the discussion down below. Like the video if you made it this far, and maybe even subscribe, and we can continue our conversation. See you next week, and Sound Sorcerer signing out.